Imagine walking into like a beautiful botanical garden, right?
Yeah, I'm picturing it.
And you find this stunning, newly bloomed flower, but instead of just admiring it, you give it a 1-star review because it has a terrible user interface
Wait, a terrible user interface.
for a flower.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, you just completely ignore the poetry of nature and instead you critique its structural design flaws. You evaluate its standalone deployment viability.
That is such a weird way to look at a plant.
Right. But that is exactly what a software engineer named Ang did in a blog post on April 14th, 2026.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And, that tension between the absolute control of a computer screen and the total unpredictable chaos of the natural world is exactly what we are exploring today.
It's a massive contrast.
It really is. So
Uh-huh.
welcome to the deep dive. We know you are here because you want to get to the bottom of things quickly, thoroughly, and without drowning in a million open tabs.
Which is so easy to do these days. Tell me about it. So today, our mission is to extract the highly practical gardening knowledge buried inside this one specific source published on keyandmem.org.
And it's a fascinating source.
It really is. But more importantly, we're going to uncover the mindset of a creator whose enormous archive of content bridges this massive gap between rigorous software engineering and the messy reality of dirt and water. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, so the author describes himself in the blog's subtitle as an old software plumber.
An old software plumber. I love that phrasing.
Right. He says he spends his nights tinkering with free, Libre, and open source software, which is often abbreviated as FALE.
Okay, got it.
And what's wild is he applies that exact same engineering mindset to his backyard. The post we are examining is titled Notes on Gardening, Part 866, a second look at pink rain lily or Zephyranthes rosea.
Hold on, part 866.
That are 866.
That is a staggering number. We absolutely have to talk about that scale in a minute.
Oh, we definitely will.
But jumping straight into the dirt here, Ang starts this particular entry by openly admitting a past failure.
Yeah, he's very transparent about it.
Right. He mentions that quite a few moons ago, back in an entry labeled Part 648, he grabbed a sample of this pink rain lily to evaluate it, and it just failed miserably.
It didn't do anything, right?
Exactly. It didn't bloom, it didn't thrive, it just sat there.
And he blames a specific methodology for that failure. He actually calls it his hands-off gardening approach.
Hands off, meaning what? He just ignored it.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
He planted the lily, stepped away, and expected the biological system to just, run on autopilot.
Linked a script running in the background.
Exactly. And when it didn't work, he essentially logged the failure as a bug report. He didn't know the missing variable at the time.
Right, until the environment introduces a massive new variable.
Heavy rains.
Yes, heavy rains roll through his area, and suddenly that dormant plant triggers into a state of full bloom.
Which is just how nature works, but he sees it as an input, right?
Completely. Ang sees this, and his interest is completely reignited. He notes that it is a beautiful sight. But this is where that software plumber mentality really takes over.
Yeah, he doesn't be romantic about it for long.
Not at all. Instead of getting poetic about the restorative power of rain, he launches into a ruthlessly practical, almost clinical review of the plant.
It's basically a product teardown.
It is. He starts with the price point, noting they run about 6 Malaysian ringgit. And then he immediately pivots to tear apart its physical form.
He explicitly states he is not a fan of the leaves.
No, he hates the leaves.
Right. He says the foliage is spindly, messy, and lacks any kind of structural aesthetic.
Reading this, I couldn't help but picture a tech reviewer complaining about a clunky smartphone.
That's the perfect analogy.
Right. He essentially concludes that the pink rain lily has a terrible user interface. The leaves are just ugly.
So it's not good on its own.
Exactly. Because of that poor UI, you cannot use this flower as a standalone potted plant. He says it doesn't justify the real estate on your patio.
But the output is a different story.
Completely. He notes that the core functionality of the output, which is that magnificent pink bloom triggered by the rain, is absolutely incredible.
It's like a back-end powerhouse stuck with a bad front end.
Yes, that is exactly what it is.
Which completely dictates his final deployment strategy for the plant.
How does he deploy it then?
He concludes that the pink rain lily is strictly suited to be ground cover. You need to mask the ugly UI by massing a whole collection of them together.
Oh, I see. So you hide the spindly leaves in a crowd.
Exactly. And when you deploy them in bulk and the rain triggers that collective bloom, he declares it definitively beats out competitor plants like the ground orchid.
Competitor plants. I just love how he frames this.
What's fascinating here is how this review, completely strips away the romanticism we usually expect from gardening blogs.
That's so true. Usually, garden writing is steeped in all this philosophy.
Right, about the soul of the earth or the gentle unfolding of petals.
Yeah, connecting with the rhythm of the seasons, all that stuff. It is rarely a harsh teardown of a plant's structural inefficiencies.
But Ang offers something much more actionable. It's a highly pragmatic, observation-based critique.
It feels very scientific.
It is. He is demonstrating the scientific method translated into software development terms. It's a process of iterative learning.
So trying things, failing, and trying again.
Exactly. He tried executing a command in part 648. It returned an error because of his hands-off approach.
The bug report we talked about.
Right. Then he observes a new environmental input, the heavy rains, which alters the state of the system.
And then he updates the documentation.
He updates his previous hypothesis. There is no sentimentality here, just the cost, the structural flaws of the leaves, the optimal deployment strategy as mass ground cover, and a direct benchmark against the ground orchid.
To understand why someone evaluates a living organism like a piece of enterprise software, you have to look at how this mind processes information entirely.
It's a very unique way of seeing the world.
It really is. Let's pull back from the garden for a second and look at the sheer, terrifying scale of how this guy operates his daily life. We noted the title earlier, right? Notes on Gardening, Part 866.
That volume is staggering on its own.
It is, but the context surrounding it makes it even more intense.
Oh, definitely. If you look at the other entries published during that exact same week, week 15 of April 2026, you witness a brain context switching across wildly different disciplines at breakneck speed.
The list is dizzying. I mean, in the same week he is debating the deployment strategy of a flower, he publishes Notes on Haskell Programming, Part 109.
Yeah, and Notes on Fish Keeping, Part 232.
Not to mention tracking his diet, his exercise routines, and his progress on the electric guitar.
We should probably clarify what some of those technical pursuits actually entail, because it highlights the contrast.
Yeah, tell me about Haskell. What is that?
Haskell isn't just any programming language. It is a purely functional, mathematically rigorous language.
So it's very strict.
It's just really. It is designed to have zero hidden variables. If a function takes an input, it always produces the exact same output. It demands absolute predictability.
Absolute predictability. And then he turns around and applies that same analytical pressure to his fish tanks.
It's wild to think about.
It really is. I was looking at his fish keeping titles from that month, and they sound like aggressive corporate management seminars.
Like what?
He has posts like priming the epistogramma and managing the biological load.
Wow. Managing the biological load.
Right. And for you listening who might not know, an epistogramma is a genus of South American dwarf cichlid.
They're a type of fish, right?
Yeah, and they are incredibly sensitive little fish. A tiny spike in ammonia or, just a 1-degree temperature drop can completely crash the tank's ecosystem.
So he is attempting to treat the biological load of a highly volatile fish tank with the exact same logic he uses to normalize and refactor his Haskell code.
Yes, he is treating a blue trumpet vine propagation exactly like he treats parsing variables in a server environment.
It is a complete flattening of the hierarchy between the digital and the biological.
Wait, I have to push back on this entire methodology, though.
Okay, why is that?
I look at this intense tracking, and I just wonder, doesn't this defeat the entire purpose of having a hobby?
You mean the relaxation aspect?
Exactly. Most people turn to the garden or the aquarium specifically to escape the rigid, spreadsheet-driven structure of their day jobs.
That's true. People want to break from the screens.
Right. Nature is supposed to be a little messy and unpredictable. If you treat an organic, living hobby like a software project complete with version control, daily logging, strict categorization, does that strip the joy and spontaneity right out of it?
I can see why you'd think that.
I mean, tracking the biological load of a fish tank every single day feels like it turns nature into a chore.
You might think so on the surface.
Yeah.
But if you look at the mechanics of what he's actually doing, this structured documentation isn't killing the joy.
It's not.
No, it is a brilliant, necessary defense mechanism against modern information overload.
I'm not following. How does writing a technical manual for your fish tank fight information overload? Isn't it just adding more data to the pile?
Think about the mechanics of human memory. Our brains operate a lot like a computer's RAM, or short-term memory.
Okay, meaning it's temporary.
Yes, it is highly volatile. Every time you go to sleep, your brain clears out the trivial data from the day to make room for tomorrow.
Right, you forget the little details.
Exactly. You plant a seed, It dies, and 3 months later you have completely forgotten the watering schedule you used.
That happens to me all the time.
Or you write a piece of code, it breaks, and a month later you cannot remember the specific error message. You just lose the lesson entirely.
Ah, I see. So, by externalizing his observations into these meticulously categorized notes, he is taking that volatile short-term RAM and writing it to a permanent, searchable hard drive.
Exactly, the mechanism at play. He isolates the variables.
So he doesn't have to rely on his own memory.
Right. The hands-off approach that failed with the pink rain lily in part 648 wasn't just a vague memory of failure. It was a documented data point.
Which changes everything when the bloom finally happens.
Yes. When the rain finally triggered the bloom, he didn't just feel happy. He could query his own personal wiki, isolate the missing variable, which was heavy water volume, and update his understanding.
He debugs nature.
He literally debugs nature. The joy he derives doesn't come from romantic chaos. It comes from true comprehension.
That actually makes a lot of sense.
You can only understand a complex system, whether that is a mathematically rigorous Haskell program or the fragile ecosystem of a fish tank, if you have reliable data stretching over time.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the scale of that reliable data is just not normal.
It's superhuman, honestly.
It is. Understanding the mechanism behind his logging is one thing, but when you look at the publishing numbers over the years, it reveals a profound, almost unimaginable dedication.
Let's talk about those numbers.
Yeah, let's look at the actual math of his public archive.
So the sidebar of the blog features a drop-down archive organized by year. And the trends there are honestly intimidating.
Intimidating is the right word.
In 2022, he published 730 posts. In 2023, he published 730 posts. In 2025, 730 posts.
It is absolute clockwork. 365 days a year multiplied by 2.
Exactly 2 posts a day, every single day, for years on end without a single break.
And just to prove how rigid this system is, look at 2024. That was a leap year.
Right.
His total for 2024, 732 posts. 2 posts for the extra day.
That is wild. Every single month breaks down with mathematical precision.
Like, January has 62 posts, February of a non-leap year has 56 posts.
March has 62, 2 a day, every day. That is an industrial level of output for a personal journal.
And he built up to this rhythm, too. It didn't happen overnight.
Oh, really? When did he start?
The archive traces all the way back to 2011, where he only published 26 posts for the entire year.
Okay, so a much more normal pace.
Yeah, you can actually track the evolution of his habit. In 2019, he hit 278 posts. In 2020, 366, so 1 a day.
And then he doubled it.
By 2022, he locked into this dual daily rhythm and never let up. And, the breadth of the content is what makes that sheer volume so impressive.
Because he's not just repeating himself.
Right. This isn't just someone microblogging about what they had for breakfast.
Not at all. The projects list on his site serves as a monument to boundless curiosity. He seamlessly blends the highly technical with the deeply analog.
Give me some examples from the tech side.
Well, on the software side, you find extensive notes on Elixir and Erlang programming, Rust, Go, Python, and artificial intelligence frameworks.
That is a lot of languages to juggle.
He even maintains a project called ELFR, which is an Elixir library for reading.
But then sitting right next to that advanced artificial intelligence programming, you have notes on meditation, notes on home improvement, betta fish spawning logs.
Notes on typesetting.
Yeah. Pearl weekly coding challenges, sitting shoulder to shoulder with miscellaneous fish spawn logs. He treats every single one of these pursuits with the exact same level of respect, documentation, and rigorous tracking.
And this methodology ties directly back to his core identity as an advocate for floss-free, Libre, and open-source software.
How does that connect to his personal logs?
You can see this highlighted in his Do Support section. He doesn't solicit sponsorships for his own massive body of work.
Really? With that much output, you'd think he'd want a Patreon or something.
Nope. Instead, he actively directs his readers to financially support major digital freedom organizations.
Like who?
He specifically points people to the Electronic Frontier Foundation, the Free Software Foundation, the Software Freedom Conservancy, the Tor Project, and Wikipedia.
That says a lot about his values.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you realize that his support for these organizations isn't just a separate political stance.
It's all part of the same philosophy.
Exactly. Floss is about anti-fragility. It is the belief that walled gardens, proprietary software, and closed corporate ecosystems are fundamentally brittle.
Because companies go bankrupt.
Yes. Apps die, servers get shut down. The only way to build a resilient technological future is to make the source code open, transparent, and community-driven.
And Aang takes that exact same philosophy and applies it to his own life.
Precisely.
By publishing his failures with the pink rain lily and his struggles with Haskell out in the open, he is making the source code of his own brain available to the public.
Think about your own habits, or the listener's habits, in the modern digital era. We live inside endless, fragmented, algorithmically driven feeds.
Endless scrolling.
Yeah, think about how many discrete pieces of information you scrolled past on your phone yesterday afternoon alone.
Too many to count.
How many articles, tweets, or videos washed over you? Can you remember any of them today?
Honestly, probably not.
Most people can't. You consume information, but you don't retain it. Aang's practice of building a structured, searchable public repository is the exact opposite of that.
He even maintains sections literally called This Week I Learned and MOOC notes for online courses.
Which is the ultimate antidote to doom scrolling.
Yeah.
He isn't just consuming the world, he is compiling it.
He takes the volatile, messy experience of being alive and he organizes it into an open source database that anyone can read, learn from, and adapt.
It's an incredible gift, really.
It is. He is contributing to the global pool of human knowledge 2 posts a day, every single day.
So what does this all mean?
Yeah, let's bring it all together. We started by looking at a rain-triggered flower, and we've ended up examining the architecture of a human life documented as open source data.
It's quite the journey.
Let's distill the core takeaways for you, the listener, to carry forward. First, we have the highly specific, actionable insight on the pink rain lily itself.
Right, the practical gardening nuggets.
Exactly. If you are ever tempted to plant Zephyranthes rosea, you now know it requires significant environmental triggers, like heavy rain, to break its dormancy.
And critically, do not deploy it as a standalone feature.
Because the UI is terrible.
Yes, the foliage lacks aesthetic value. Use it as mass ground cover, where the collective back-end powerhouse of its bloom can easily outshine alternatives like the ground orchid.
Second, we uncovered the hidden power of iterative, documented observation.
This is huge.
Even if you consider yourself a hands-off hobbyist, simply writing down the parameters of your failures allows you to spot the missing variables when success finally arrives. You can debug your own garden.
And third, we saw the incredible, undeniable value of cross-disciplinary logging.
Merging two completely different worlds.
Right. The real magic happens at the intersection, where mathematically rigid Haskell programming meets the chaotic biological load of an epistogram of fish tank.
Using the mental models of one discipline to solve the problems of another.
Exactly. And for you listening, the application of all this is highly practical.
Though we should clarify, we are absolutely not suggesting you need to suddenly start writing 730 blog posts a year.
No, please don't try to lock into a 2-post-a-day rhythm starting tomorrow. You will burn out immediately.
Yeah, that is an extreme sport level of documentation.
It really is. But applying just a fraction of the software plumber's meticulous logging to your own life could completely change how you learn.
Just writing a few things down.
If you stop letting your daily experiences, your minor failures, and your passing interests just wash away like cleared RAM, and instead start writing them down to a hard drive, categorizing them, tagging them, reflecting on them, you transform fleeting curiosity into deep, retained knowledge.
You stop just experiencing your hobbies and start compiling a personal wiki.
This raises an important question.
Which brings us to a final thought we want you to mull over long after this deep dive ends.
Aang calls himself an old software plumber. He spends his nights tinkering with digital code, building software tools, and contributing to the architecture of the web.
But the harsh reality of technology is that software rots.
It really does. Code becomes obsolete.
Programming languages die out. Entire frameworks are replaced in a matter of years. The digital tools he builds today might not even exist in a decade.
By meticulously, relentlessly documenting his daily failures and successes with the dirt, the water, the fish, and his own human habits, is he actually cultivating something much more resilient than code?
Could it be that his text-based digital garden, this sprawling, messy, beautifully categorized 800-part ledger of nature and learning, will ultimately outlive the very software he spends his nights tinkering with?
It's very possible.
The machines and the servers will eventually break down, but the human process of observing a pink rain lily bloom after a heavy storm, that mechanism of curiosity, is timeless.
It's fundamentally human.
It makes you wonder, if you were to stop doom scrolling today and start writing your own observations down, what would your digital garden look like?
Would it be a chaotic, overgrown patch of forgotten ideas, or a meticulously documented open-source ecosystem ready to weather the storm?
Something to think about the next time you try to compile the natural world. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.